So for those who don't know, I carry a P365 as my everyday carry, but before that I was carrying a Glock 19, which is considered to be a mid-sized pistol between a full-size and a micro-compact. Now over the years I've added a couple accessories like a red dot, co-witness, suppressor sights, and a light. So I just got to give a quick shout out to the team at Eclipse Holster for building me a custom holster so I can finally be able to carry my Glock 19 again. Now, the goal of this video is to hopefully help someone who's considered getting a mid-sized pistol as a CCW by going over some of the pros and cons I personally have experienced while carrying a pistol of this size and explain the reasons why I stopped carrying it in the first place. Okay, so starting off with the pros, we have recoil. Now, keep in mind, I'm coming from a place where I'm carrying a micro compact pistol, and one of my biggest issues with smaller handguns are just how snappy they are, which makes it so much harder to control, especially at further distances when you're trying to get those follow-up shots at a fast rate. So this is where something like a mid-sized pistol has helped a lot because they have a much larger slide and barrel, which help a lot in reducing recoil. You also have a much larger frame, which allow for a more secure hold, helping you to distribute the force across your hands, giving you better control. And on top of that, you have a bit of an increased weight compared to smaller guns that help absorb more of the impact, making your shooting experience a little bit more manageable. Now, next on the list is accuracy. Now, my grouping, I'll be honest, isn't and has never been the best, especially at further distances like 30 yards, but I've talked about this before on my channel. I don't train to have the tightest grouping. I train to put shots on center mass as fast and accurate as I possibly can, especially under pressure, because there's one thing showing off a really tight grouping at 30 yards in a calm and steady position over having your adrenaline pumping and drawing your weapon as fast as you can and putting shots on target. Now, like I said, my grouping's not the best, I get it, but the fact for me is I struggle sometimes being able to accurately hit center mass at 30 yards with anything smaller than a mid-sized handgun. Now, I can do it and have shown it in previous videos, but it's just not at the same speed, which for me is really important because, let's be honest, in a real life self-defense situation, say at 30 yards, you're not going to be able to take your sweet ass time and do these slow trigger pulls to get the tightest grouping possible. This is a huge reason why I went back to carrying something bigger, and it's because of how accurate I know I am with a gun of this size, especially at longer ranges. Which brings me to the next thing I want to talk about: range. Now, being able to hit a target past 30 yards may seem like a bit overkill, which I used to believe till I heard about the Indiana mall shooting, which happened a couple years ago, where a hero by the name of Eli Dickens stopped a mall shooter at about 40 yards, firing I think what's about 10 rounds and only missing 2. Now, I'm not saying those scenarios are practical because according to statistics, most self-defense shootings happen at about 3 to 7 yards, which if you have ever seen any of my drills, that's usually what I train for. Now, here and there, I'll try pushing it past 10 to 15 yards, which at those distances, I feel somewhat comfortable with what I'm currently carrying. Now, just recently for situations where I know I'm going to be in an open environment, I've started switching out my everyday carry to a mid-sized handgun because of the ranges I know I can cover confidently at a decent speed, and most importantly with accuracy. Finally on the list is versatility. Now, most compact to mid-sized pistols not only work great as a CCW, but can also be used for something like a home defense weapon. that you can have stationed somewhere in a room as a bedside weapon. I highly recommend this because the weapon you're choosing to carry should be one that you trust and know is reliable. It's not going to jam on you or anything. And then on top of that, you add all the time and training you put behind that weapon, I believe will provide you with the skill and technique to be able to handle a high stress situation in or outside your home effectively. Okay, now let's talk about the cons and why a mid-sized handgun may not be the best option for you if you care about or struggle with things like concealment. Now, me personally, as someone who carries appendix, one of my biggest issues with mid-sized handguns has always been the grip printing at certain angles or during certain movements. Now, to some, that may not be a big deal, and I hear it all the time, and I agree. Most normal everyday NPCs will probably not notice, but for someone like me living in a state that's not very 2A friendly and often being in places where people may not be too fond of someone carrying a firearm, especially when they may not be aware that yes, California allows for concealed carry with a permit. For me, it's just something I've always focused on. Now, I have been recently, like I said, started carrying my Glock 19 again, and the ways I personally have been able to carry comfortably knowing I am not printing is by wearing baggier and thicker layers like hoodies and flannels. Now, I understand that may not be everyone's style, but that's personally what's helped me a lot when it comes to things like concealment. Now, next on the list, and one of the most important reasons why I stopped carrying a mid-sized handgun is comfort, especially when sitting down for an extended period of time or during certain movements like bending over to reach for something or kneeling down to tie my shoe. Now, I know people say they work 12-hour shifts carrying appendix all day long and they say they don't feel any sort of discomfort whatsoever, which, come on man, even when carrying something as small as a micro compact pistol, I sometimes have to take it off during long drives or off-body carry during hikes or any activity where I know I'm going to be moving a lot. Now, I will say it is manageable, but for me, carrying something that large for an extended period of time just wasn't practical. Eventually, I would end up leaving it in the car, potentially leaving myself unarmed and defenseless if a situation arose where I needed my gun to protect myself. Now, last but not least, we have weight. Now, I'm not here to put all the blame on the weight of my gun for my lower back pain because I blame school for that and having us seated to 5 to 6 hours every day in these horrendous and uncomfortable desks. But I will say carrying a gun with a bit of weight to it can cause strains, especially if you're carrying for a long periods or in a position that puts pressure on your body. Over time, this added weight can lead to discomfort in areas like your lower back, shoulders, or hips. So if you're someone who deals with things like this already, you may perhaps consider getting something a bit smaller or try carrying in a different position that doesn't put too much pressure on your body over time. Now, before I end this video, I would like to mention a few pros that I forgot to add in the beginning of this video, starting off with capacity. Now, unless you live in a free state or have grandfather magazines in states that have restrictions on high capacity magazines, you're able to sometimes carry up to 15 and 17 rounds per mag, which is always great to have more ammo, especially if you're not carrying a spare magazine, which if you're not, I don't know what to tell you. You should always have a spare mag. Another thing people often mention about mid-sized handguns is the larger grip, which they say makes for an easier and more secure draw. Now, me personally, I don't notice much of a difference. I draw about the same speed with both a mid-size and a micro compact pistol. I don't find one significantly easier to draw from concealment than the other, but I think a lot of it comes down with the training and the hours I've spent behind both of these guns, which plays a huge role in muscle memory and overall speed. So at the end of the day, whether you go with a mid-sized handgun or decide to try something smaller for easier concealment and better comfort according to your lifestyle, the most important thing is you train with that weapon. That's all I gotta say. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you like to see the drills I train with both my mid-size and micro compact pistol, make sure to check out my Instagram. I post a lot of those videos on there. Also, if you want to get in contact with me, that's a great place. Other than that, guys, hope you guys have a weekend. Stay safe and God bless.